Welcome everybody. We're just getting ready to start the WIC Works webinar about baby food for older infants and looking at a fresh option. We're going to wait just for a few more people to join us, and we'll do a sound check. This is Margaret Aumann, moderator, and I just want to double check that our panelists can be heard quickly and easily. We have Lori True, Executive Director of CWA, here with us. Lori, say something.
Good morning, everyone.
And Loanne Kim and Laureen Ritchie. If you could all, each of you, say good morning, and we'll make sure that everybody can hear you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Great. We can hear you fine. If anybody listening in on the webinar is having trouble hearing anybody, use the chat function to send us a little message. And I'll also give directions later if you're having any trouble with your transmission. And it looks like it's 11:30 and we can get started. So again, welcome everybody to the first one of our 2012 webinars on WIC Works. This one's about baby food for older infants. We're going to be looking at some research and some options that we'll be advocating for in the future. And you should be able to see my slides. Oh. The objectives, like I said, we're going to be looking at how WIC participants have responded to the baby foods more recently available in WIC, how they're redeeming the vouchers for these baby foods, and how that shifts as babies grow older, and then look at some of the other options for these older children. So just some technical things about using our GoToWebinar system. Excuse me, you can listen on your computer speakers or by telephone. And if you have any problems, here are the numbers, and they're on the footer of every slide. You can dial in. It's not a toll-free call, but there's an access code there. Hopefully everybody's able to do it through their computers. If you are on the phone, please don't put your phone on hold. It wreaks havoc with the webinar system. So just listen in. And if you need any help, there's the help webpage or a toll-free number there for you. Just going to go quickly through your screen in case you're new to GoToWebinar. Here's where you can minimize your sidebar so that you can see more of the slides clearly that we'll be showing. It goes away like that, comes back like that. Here's where you can switch to using the telephone if you need to. There's your PIN number, access code. If you want to ask a question or send us a message, there's a chat function. That you may also see a question function in your menu. That's also good to use. And there's ways to change how you view your screen on that pull-down menu there. So about questions, we'll have time at the end of our 30 minutes to for you to ask questions, and we'll answer as many as we can. So either in the chat box or the question box in your control panel, type something, and we will see it and direct it to the appropriate panelist. If you have to leave early, or you know somebody who would like to listen to this webinar and see the slides, you can go to our webpage. Early next week it should be up. And we're not offering CEUs for this short informational webinar. Now, if anybody's out there twittering or tweeting, you can use the hashtag WICWorks. All right, just a little bit about the California WIC Association. We're putting on these webinars for your information and to let you learn about research. We also do education and training and staff development and advocacy for WIC programs in California, but a lot of it, of course, applies to programs nationwide. So we're happy that many of you are joining us from out of state. I'll display this slide at the end, but I just want you to know there are lots of resources out there on today's webinar topic and for the recording later. So you can, these slides will also be back on our website. So Lori, I'm going to have you go ahead and introduce our panelists, and we'll change over to their slide program.
Good morning, everyone. This is Lori True. I'm the Executive Director of CWA, and I'm very, very happy to have our two panelists. Unfortunately, Shannon Whaley, Dr. Shannon Whaley from Public Health Foundation Enterprises, WIC in Los Angeles, had a family emergency and was unable to participate, but we're very lucky to have two excellent WIC and nutrition researchers joining us, and they actually worked on this research project with Shannon, and so we're very lucky to have them. And I'd like to welcome Lorraine Ritchie, who is the Director of Research from the Atkins Center on Weight and Health at UC Berkeley. And Lorraine is an excellent and very well-known researcher. She's has become very expert with the WIC program and child care, early child nutrition, and she's done many research projects with the WIC community over the years, and we're very lucky to have her on board. And also Loanne Tham Kim, who is an assistant professor of nutrition in nutritional sciences at Pepperdine University, and also worked on this project and is very familiar with the WIC program down in Los Angeles. So welcome to both of you. You can read more about them, and they'll tell you more about themselves as they present. Lorraine is going to go first, and then she'll basically help Loanne run the slides that she's going to talk about, and they'll sort of split the presentation. And then when they're finished, I'll get back on, and we'll talk about some of the policy ramifications of these findings and discuss it together as a group. So Lorraine, take it away, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that excellent introduction. Well, as Lori mentioned, we are very sad that Shannon couldn't be with us, but we also want to acknowledge some of the other contributors to this project. It takes a village to do a research project, and you can see from this list that not only Loanne and myself contributed, but Shannon, Pat Gritzel, Nancy Crocker from the State WIC office, and Gail Harrison from UCLA. And I also want to acknowledge our funding sources. We got generous funding from the USDA as well as the American Heart Association, which made this research possible. Well, you all know that in 2009, the WIC food package was revised, and one of the things that happened was that fruits and vegetables were added to the WIC food package for all participants for the first time. And as you know, that's in the form of vouchers for cash purchase for women and older children, but it's in the form of baby food for infants 6 to 11 months of age, and that was the focus of this research project. We wanted to examine participant utilization and satisfaction with these jarred baby foods, see whether there was a difference in preference between the baby foods and fruits and vegetable vouchers, and then also examine whether preferences varied among select ethnic groups. Since this is a new option for WIC participants, we wanted to see how well they liked it and what we might be able to recommend in terms of improving the options. The really nice thing about this study design, and one of the reasons I'm so grateful for all the partners that were on this project, is that we examined this issue of jarred baby foods from multiple standpoints. And we used 3 data sources. So we were fortunate to be able to do that, and that just strengthens, as you know, any recommendations or conclusions and findings that we have by being able to replicate the findings or examine this topic from multiple standpoints. So we looked at data from the NEFP study, which stands for the Nutrition, Education, and Food Package Impact Study, and I'll talk a little bit about that in more detail, but basically that was a survey of WIC participants statewide. We'll also talk about some data from the state on redemption of baby foods. And then Loanne in particular did some one-on-one interviews, more in-depth interviews to collect data from a subset of WIC participants in Los Angeles County, as well as staff who work with those participants. So I'm going to briefly give you a little roadmap of the 3 components of that study, and then Loanne is going to share with you our exciting results. So again, the NEFP study, the survey part, that survey was done in the first half of 2010. we randomly selected almost 3,000 participants from the WIC roles, and so we have representation from all across the state. You can see there that the average age was about 29 years old. Most of the women were Latino, and we had some pregnant, some breastfeeding, and then some mothers of WIC children 0 to 5 years of age. The questions that we asked the participants are the three that you see there. Of course, we asked them many, many questions, but the questions that we're going to talk about with you today had to do with their satisfaction with both the vouchers for fruits and vegetables, the WIC checks for jarred baby foods for those in the sample who received those, and then we asked the participants if they had a choice. Would they prefer to receive the checks for jarred baby food, or would they choose vouchers to buy fruits and vegetables for their baby? In the California redemption data, we examined all infant food checks which contained jarred fruits and vegetables and calculated the percent redemption. And this again was over the 2010 window. And you can see that similar to our WIC NFP data, the participants that we have data for redemption is very similar in terms of being largely Latino. And we also examined the redemption rates by ethnic group and age of the infants. And Loanne will show you some exciting results, I think, based on that breakdown. And then finally, the last piece, which added some rich commentary to the survey and statewide data, were one-on-one interviews, again, collected over roughly the same time period, end of 2009 to early, or halfway through 2010 rather. And Loanne interviewed 20 WIC participants that had been enrolled in WIC for at least a year. In this particular case, all were of Mexican origin and half were born in the United States, and then 16 WIC staff. And you can see their demographics there as well. She went into more detail on topics relating to the baby food, their use of the jarred baby food versus the purchase of fresh fruits and vegetables, and their preference for those as well. And she will share some of those findings with you. So Loanne, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you so much. The findings are really exciting, and we're in the process of getting these published. So I wanted to share with you some of the results. Well, first of all, overall satisfaction with the vouchers for fruits and vegetables was fairly high. So over the average was about 74%. We're very satisfied with the vouchers for fruits and vegetables. Now, in the next slide, what you see is in terms of the jarred baby foods, the satisfaction rate overall was fairly high as well, and that was on average about 84%. Now, when we looked at the next question in the next slide, if they were given a choice, about 2/3 of these participants actually preferred the vouchers for fruits and vegetables over the jarred baby foods. And what's interesting is when you look at the ethnic breakdowns, about 70% of Latinos and others, and I actually specifically looked at the Asian groups, and their rates were actually 75% who preferred the vouchers for fruits and vegetables, as compared with about 50% of the African American and Caucasian participants in this study. Now, in the next slide, what we see is that in terms of the preference, it's interesting that their preference for the jarred baby foods actually declined as the babies got older. So within the 6 to 8 month range, the preference was close to 50%, and it dropped down to about 20 in 9 to 11 month olds. And then that preference increased with regards to age. As the child got older, the decline in jarred baby foods meant actually an increase in preference in terms of the fruit and vegetable vouchers. Now, in the next slide, what we see is when we looked at the California redemption data, the data pretty much matched what we found in the NFP study. that as they got older, the redemption rates for jarred baby foods actually declined as well. So this more or less confirmed what we saw in the NFP study. And what is interesting in the next slide was when we actually went out and spoke with these mothers, what we found that was that many of them preferred actually to buy and be able to make their own baby foods. So this is just a snippet of what I found in the narratives. One mom said they are good. When you go to the store, my daughter can choose which fruits she wants, referring to the vouchers. I wish they would give more checks for fruits and vegetables. And then another mom said families can always use more fruits and vegetables. In the next slide, what we found was interesting was that although they preferred and liked the jarred baby foods, when we had them compare the two, many of them actually preferred the vouchers for fruits and vegetables. And the reason being is that many of them wanted to actually make their own foods. One mom said, can I have more money to buy fruits and vegetables? I like to make my own food for my kids. I think it's better. Another mom said, when I am out, it's easy to have, but they give us so many, and I can never finish them, and sometimes they expire. Particularly, this was very much the case for a lot of the Latino parents, as well as the Chinese and Vietnamese parents that we interviewed in a separate follow-up study to this. Now, when we asked the staff, they more or less confirmed what we thought. One staff said they like the vouchers for fruits and vegetables. Jar baby foods, they don't use them as much. They make their own baby foods and they don't want it. I would suggest they give the women the option of fruits and vegetable vouchers so they can make their own baby food. Another staff who had worked with the WIC program for about 19 years said this. For a long time we were telling them it was better to make their own baby food, but now we're telling them to get baby food. It's mixed messages. In Hispanic culture, we're not big on jar baby foods. They give, if they got more money for the fruits and vegetables, it would be much better. So in terms of the implications for the study, the addition of the jarred baby foods to the infant food package has been well received overall by participants. They like it for the convenience of it. But what we found through the 3 different studies is that as babies get older, mothers do want that option to be able to choose between the jarred baby foods and the vouchers in order to prepare their own baby foods. And so as a next step, we're hoping that we can apply for funding to conduct a pilot study to explore the feasibility of allowing states to offer the parents of older infants this option to be able to get vouchers versus the jarred baby foods. So overall, thank you so much for listening to this webinar. These are our email addresses if you have any questions, and I'll turn it back over to Lori. Thank you.
Thank you, Loanne, and thank you, Lorene, for a really nice, clear, and succinct presentation of this great little study. We're really glad to see that we have almost 200 listeners, many from other states, and we're hoping to find, as we talk to you via the web, that many of you are finding the same thing. But we are finding in California that the WIC participants do like the jarred baby food, fruits, and vegetables, but as the babies get older, they want a little more flexibility. Just to let you know how you can get these slides and other resources, you go to our website, which is calwic.org, and go to events, and then you'll see the webinars. And as we go through our WICWorks webinars, we'll post the recordings. It will be an audio recording in the slides, as well as all the resources that go with them. We have done a policy brief on this baby food issue, which you can get under our publications, on our publications page. And all you need to do is download it. It's a 2-pager, and it has basically the general findings of this wonderful study. And so I just want to briefly talk about what, what are the policy implications. Clearly, we feel here in California that there's a need for more flexibility, particularly as the infants get older and they're starting to explore new tastes, and also the cultural issues in terms of our very high Latino population just isn't used to using so much jarred baby food. So we are recommending in our policy brief 3 key action recommendations. One, we probably should do a little more research to see maybe the differences, because as you know, fully breastfeeding moms get jarred baby food meats. How is that going? Do they like them? Are they using them? What's the redemption of those jarred baby foods in particular? Because this study wasn't able to split out because of the way our paper checks are issued. The foods are mixed, so it's hard to tell which is which. So we need to do a little more research on baby food meats for the breastfeeding babies. But we really would like to ask USDA to take a look at some pilot studies to explore allowing states to offer parents the choice between baby foods, fruits and vegetables, and using fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh produce, and making their own baby food. And then an even more creative option to go with that is, in the same way that we use breast pumps, the breast pumps are allowed in the WIC program, and you can purchase those with food dollars instead of NSA dollars. If we ever get a pilot and actually start to make this work, it would be really a good idea to use very simple hand-cranked baby food grinders, allow local agencies and states to purchase those grinders to get moms started in learning how to make homemade baby food, fruits and vegetables, and keeping things safe and sanitary and at the right temperature, et cetera, et cetera. So pretty simple set of recommendations, and we're very eager to talk to policymakers in Washington about this option when we go to Washington in a couple of months. So that's basically it, and we're very eager to take some questions in the few minutes that we have left. To ask a question, just simply use the chat or question function, and we'll take as many questions as we can before we have to go off the air.
So the first one we have is, what was the redemption rate for the fruit and vegetable vouchers? I think that's as opposed to baby food.
Lorraine or Loanne, can you answer that question to the redemption rate for the fruit and vegetable vouchers that WIC moms are getting?
On average, what we found was that the redemption rates were over 80% at ages 6 to 7 months, but then it dropped to about 60% by the time they're 10 to 12 months.
But that's for the jarred baby food, right?
Yes.
That's
what
correct.
about for fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, I don't have that data in front of me, but what I remember Shannon saying is it's very high. So I think it's within that same range, 80 to or above percent.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere between 80 and 90. It's very high.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Yeah, I don't have the data in front of me either, but I recall that as well.
Okay, here's another question. Is parent-made prepared baby food more beneficial to child's nutrition than jarred? Is there a difference?
So I can answer that question. We don't want to make people feel bad about using jarred baby foods. They are a huge convenience. But a parent then doesn't have any control over how much salt or sugar or other things that might be added to those fruits and vegetables. And if they're not careful, they might pick up some that aren't what they want. So, by making it yourself, then you have full control over how much additional things might be added to just the fresh fruits and vegetables.
Well, yes, but just to point out, WIC in California and I think nationwide, WIC only allows just the pureed fruits and vegetables, no sugar added.
So the salt, though, might be an issue. With the jarred baby foods, the fat might be an issue. So making your own, again, is a way to control some of those other things.
Right, but these are only fruits and vegetables that there's none of the meals or combo items are allowed in at least I believe nationwide, but particularly California. Just the pureed fruits and vegetables.
And the baby meats. Yeah.
And meats, just the
Yeah.
just meat, nothing else.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, it is an issue. No salt is added in our items. Here's a good question. What age are you referring to as an older infant? What age did you start to see infants wanting homemade baby food?
Well, I think when we looked at the separation, it was about 80%, about 6 to 7 months, and then the decline was from 10 to 12. So I think it's somewhere around that 8 to 10 month age range where we actually began to see some of the decline.
If you also look at the redemption data, you can see it's fairly linear, suggesting that, you know, it's the highest at 6 months and straight down it goes from then up until 12 months, going from, you know, approximately 80% redemption all the way down to around 50 to 60%.
Right, it's a steady drop as the months go by.
Exactly.
Here's a question. Why did USDA include baby foods in the first place? And I can answer that.
Yeah, Lori.
The USDA used the Institute of Medicine, a lengthy study and comprehensive report from the Institute of Medicine to set its new regulations on the healthier food packages. And the intent of the baby food change, which we did not have baby food on the WIC program before, was to make sure that the produce, the fruits and vegetables in jars, gets to the infant. And the concern was sanitation was one concern, but also targeting. That with baby food, fruits and vegetables, the infants would actually get the food. If you give it to the family in general in terms of a cash value voucher for fresh produce, there's no real insurance that the infant will get the food. But when you look at the redemption rates, it's clear that the redemption rate is going down for baby food, fruits and vegetables. So if USDA's intent is to make sure the baby gets the fresh produce and gets that taste early on in life, that objective is not being met because the moms are not redeeming the vouchers.
And anecdotally, in Loanne's interviews, moms were saying, yeah, well, I redeemed it, but I couldn't use it all. It was more than I needed.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of really good questions about texture. Can either of you address the issue of changing texture in terms of as infants develop, and the challenge with jarred baby food?
Luann, do you want me to take a stab at that?
Yes, go ahead, Lorraine.
So I think what this question is getting at is that with the jarred baby foods, they're all a very similar thickness or viscosity or consistency, as opposed to with baby foods that a mom or dad were to make themselves. They could add more or less water. They could make the grinding, you know, more pureed versus more mashed as the child gets older, so that's consistent with what we know children developmentally move from, you know, pureed foods to mashed foods to chopped foods to then to table foods. So that giving the moms the option to make their own baby food allows them to move with their baby through those developmental ages in a way that jarred baby foods offer less flexibility that way.
Okay, so I think that basically wraps it up. We wish we had more time for questions, but we're trying to keep these webinars quick and easy for people to hop on, hop off. So with that, we recommend that you pull down our policy brief and read it carefully, and we ask you to join us if you'd like to talk to USDA about considering some pilots to test changes and allowing more flexibility with the baby food option. I'd like to deeply thank Margaret Alman for facilitating this, and Lorene Ritchie and Loanne Pham Kim for supporting the research, and we'll see you at our next WIC Works webinar in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everyone, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.